Shenanigans. Truth, lies, 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 shenanigans. Shenanigans. Truth, lies, 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 shenanigans. Shenanigans. Truth, lies, shenanigans. Truth, lies, shenanigans. Truth, lies, shenanigans. Truth, lies, shenanigans. Shenanigans. Truth, lies, 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 shenanigans.
Hey friends, this is Truth, Lies, Shenanigans, the live show for Sunday, October 18th, 2020. My name is Neo, and I'd like to welcome all of you to our deep, fun, and crazy show. Now let me introduce you to my co-host for this afternoon. Opposite me, our fiery sports journalist, Miss Lizzie.
Whoop, 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 whoop. Happy Sunday, Funday. Yes, the Washington football team is losing. That's
Again?
why I have my drinks.
Again? Oh man. All right, and in the window below me, our Canadian hockey fanatic and Bruins fan, Mr. Rob B.
Bonjour, hi from Canada, eh?
Finally, the Canadian accent. Thank you, Rob.
After that SNL skit this weekend, I had to open with Bonjour, hi.
That was hilarious.
Living your truth. Living your truth.
All right, for today's show, we have an amazing guest spotlight today. Best-selling author and sports journalist Jeff Pearlman joins us to talk about his new book, Three-Ring Circus, Kobe, Shaq, Phil, and the Crazy Years of the Lakers Dynasty. Should be an amazing conversation. Hopefully, we'll have enough time to get to our hot topics, where Lizzie would be talking about Ice Cube, speaking for all Black people. Rob B telling us about Rudy Giuliani's new shenanigans. Yeah, so we're live everywhere. Twitter, YouTube, Periscope, you name it, you'll find us. And you can also find us at truthlieshenanigans.com. If you're looking for us on social media, it's at TLS Live Show. Of course, we always love it when you join in the conversation. Make sure you invite someone, mention some friends in the feed, because we'll be responding to some of your questions online, live on air. And if you miss our live show, you can now listen to previous episodes on iTunes, Spotify. You can even just ask Google, Alexa, or Siri, play Truth, Lies, Shenanigans podcast. So, awesome, nice and easy. Siri. All right, guys. We're going to start things off with a quick fire question.
All
I
right,
want to get your initial reactions. All right. There's only 15 days left until we find out if we successfully voted this fool out of office. But this past week, Trump had another one of his super spreader rallies where he said this.
Could you imagine if I lose my whole life? What am I going to do? I'm going to say, I lost to the worst candidate in the history of politics. I'm not going to feel so good. Maybe I'll have to leave the country. I don't know.
Ooh, Lizzie.
Can't leave the country when you have warrants out for your arrest.
Oh, that's right.
Sir President.
Robbie.
So, yeah.
Vladimir Putin's already set aside a wonderful dacha in Rubliovka for Comrade Trump. He's executed their U.S. destabilization plans like a true KGB operative.
I'm trying to figure out which country wants this dude. I mean, I don't think Rob's Canada will take him. Probably not Mexico or China.
Maybe
I
he
think
can still get to Ireland. He has a golf resort in Ireland. Maybe he can still go there. But
maybe
the
Putin's
Finns
Russia.
don't want him. The
Maybe
Finns
Russia
don't
will.
want him.
The
Don't
Finns
go
don't
to
want.
Finland. No, the Finns don't want him.
Yeah, I'm not feeling. Hey, I'll be happy if he goes. I'm happy. I mean, please leave the
I want
country.
him here. I want him here. He got some cases
That's
that
true.
he needs to take care of. Jail time that he needs to do. I want him here, front and center.
That's true.
Court
Yeah.
TV, CNN.
Yeah, he wants to be a star. Let's make him a star for real.
Right.
An infamous
Love
celebrity.
after lockup. He and Melania, love after lockup.
Love after reality series. I love it. All right, so let me tell our viewers what Truth, Lies, and Shenanigans is all about, and we've given you a little bit of a taste. We'll be sharing our truths and opinions with you, calling out the lies and pointing out the ridiculous shenanigans going on. But most importantly on this show, we try to have fun with some shenanigans of our own. But one rule and one rule only for the host, no cussing. If you're caught cussing, there's a $10 penalty. And if you guys are caught cussing 3 times in the same show, and our viewers will call you out, then you'll be writing a love letter to...
You wrote me beautiful letters. And
You
they're
can
great
cuss
letters.
if you were referring to this mofo right here. Cuss.
As you can see, Lizzie went up $10 from last show.
What? I didn't curse last show. What are you talking about?
You got called. Yeah.
You used a racial epithet.
What did I say?
A racial epithet.
What, coon?
Oh, there we go. That's another. And I want to say that the money goes to a deserving charity, and we're doing it right after November 4th because we got to change all our graphics anyway.
Well, I'm going to tell y'all, there's probably going to be a lot of cussing this show if we are using that as the measure.
All right. So we have an amazing guest spotlight today. Today's guest spotlight is sports writer and author Jeff Pearlman. Jeff, welcome to the show. We have a legitimate superstar celebrity.
Where is he?
Welcome.
Right. Welcome to the show. Let me introduce our audience to you. Okay. Jeff is a New York Times bestselling author of 9 books. He's a former Sports Illustrated senior writer and ESPN.com columnist. He also co-hosts the Two Writers Slinging Yang podcast. His books include biographies of Walter Payton, Brett Favre, Barry Bonds, and Roger Clemens, as well as profiles on the '86 Mets, the '90s Cowboys, the '80s Lakers, and his most recent title, 3-Ring Circus, Kobe, Shaq, Phil, and the Crazy Years of the Lakers Dynasty, was just released in September and is now available on Amazon.com. Jeff?
The number 1 sports book on Amazon right now. The number 1 sports book on Amazon right now.
Thank you so much for joining us, Jeff.
Kudos.
It's like having my mother brag about me, hearing don't forget, my mom would be like, my Jewish mom would be like, don't forget to tell them it's the number 1 book in sports on Amazon.
Thank you. Just, so we're clear for the audience, Jeff and I go way back. So I got my start as an intern and then a reporter, journalist at Sports Illustrated. And Jeff was already there as a senior writer at Sports Illustrated when I started back in the summer of 1998. So we have known each other for a very long time. He is a very dear friend to me. He actually gives me comments when I don't even want to comment nicely about myself. So we've been through a lot of interesting conversations together, interesting perspectives, covered a lot of stories together. So it is a pleasure to have him here.
I do want to say, can I say one thing? I'm surprised. I can't call you Liz. I always call you Newman. That you didn't introduce me as my past life, which is there's this picture of me. It's if you Google, I think it's probably the number 1 picture that comes up. It was after I wrote this story about this baseball player, John Rocker, and it's me wearing a backwards Kangol hat, and I look like it's from like 1999 or 2000. So I look like the drummer for Pearl Jam, or like a failed mediocre hip hop artist from the era. So I thought that would come up.
Listen, they used that picture. They used that picture in Jet magazine. Okay.
Oh yeah,
and
that was awesome.
He was kind of passing for biracial in that picture.
Yeah, I wasn't awesome. Jet bucket list, you know.
All right, so I know you're friends with Elizabeth, with Lizzie. Sorry, our Lizzie.
Newman.
Now feel free to tell us a little bit more about yourself, but also our audience would definitely love to hear any juicy, salacious stories you have about working with our wonderful Lizzie.
I have a great one. So I'm going to bring it up and talk about it. I was doing a story for Sports Illustrated. I was a baseball writer mainly, but they had me do an Allen Iverson story. And I went to Philly, and they sent me there, and they sent Newman kind of after me last minute to help me with the reporting because it was a tough story and Iverson was being difficult. And for some reason, Philly, all the hotel rooms were booked. And so I had a room, and we were going to share a room. And I was like, I was either married at the time or, whatever, dating my wife now. And I was like, innocently, which you obviously know, I was like, well, we can just share the bed. What's the big deal? You put some pillows down the middle. And she's like, no, you can't share a bed. Right, hell no. And I was actually making a very moralistic point. Like, what's the big deal? Obviously, nothing's going to happen. It's not like that, blah, 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 blah. So then I think you might have said, call your wife and see what she thinks. Now, you weren't saying call your wife to come up with the answer. You were just like, watch what happens when you call your wife and ask her. So I call my wife, who's as trusting and open-minded as there is, and like wasn't like thinking like, oh, he's cheating. And she's like, no woman would ever be like, yeah, I'll just share a bed with a guy. So we didn't share the bed.
But that's how tight we are.
We could have shared the bed. Yeah.
That's good. It's good to have a friendship like that. I mean, it's hard to find those male-female friendships like that. Awesome.
Yeah, she's one of the best. I'll tell you something. I'm being serious. One of the best people I ever worked with, one of the most talented people I've ever worked with, and what I've always said to her, and I've said to a million people, she writes these things on Facebook. There are very few people. I'm an argumentative New Yorker. My wife's an argumentative New Yorker. There are very few people I know who, when they write stuff, especially when she replies to something I wrote that she disagrees with, where at the end of it, I'm like, oh, damn it.
I know you start agreeing with her, right?
And I'm like, oh, she won again. And she could have been an amazing columnist if she wanted to pursue that path because she's really argumentative and really persuasive in her argument.
She's persuasive. Yep. Yeah, very talented. I agree. We're lucky. We're blessed to have her. So.
Yeah, right, you definitely are.
I was listening to your book on Audible, and I love your writing style. I see why you're a best-selling writer. It's because you're about storytelling. And when I was listening, I often felt like I was there, like a voyeur, watching what was going on behind the scenes. I don't want to give anything away, but you throw us right into the fight at the start of the book. So,
yeah.
And you pull no punches when you critique people, which is, that's really good. So, and you made me laugh a lot. So, can you tell viewers a little bit more about the book, Three Ring Circus?
So it's basically chronicles the 96 to 04 Lakers. So the arrival of Shaq and Kobe until Shaq was traded to Miami and Phil Jackson wasn't brought back. And it's actually my second Laker book. It's the only time I've ever doubled up on a topic. I did a book about the Magic Johnson era called Showtime. And
Showtime.
I was on a podcast Michael Cooper hosted, and he said to me, he goes, I have one complaint about this book. Why is AC Green on the cover, not me? Right? And if you look at the cover,
I gotta look at it again. Hold on.
It's a very fair argument. I was like, there's no argument for that one. You're actually right. Like, AC Green should not be on the cover. You should probably be on the cover. But I've written 2 Laker books, and I just really thought I wrote it before Kobe died, but I really thought the Shaq Kobe dynamic was fascinating. Books sort of hang on big characters, and Shaq, Kobe, Phil, huge characters. Jerry West, a big character. Jerry Buss, a huge character. There's just a lot of things to write about. So it took me about 2 years. It was a nightmare. It was really hard. It was probably the hardest book I've ever written. But books are hard.
Yeah.
Do you think, and so Antonio or Neo, brought up the fight and or the one fight that you write about, and I wonder, do you think people actually really knew? Like, everyone knew that they didn't get along, Kobe and Shaq. everyone knew that there was kind of like this tussle back and forth for ownership. You know, Kobe screaming, "This is my team." Shaq is screaming, "No, motherfucker, this is my team." And I say that as a quote from the book. I quote the
At the
book.
quarter.
Okay, all right. All right.
Do you think like Laker fans really knew that it was that bad, that it had gotten physical?
I think they'd forgotten a little bit. I think what happened is with time, about a year and a half ago, maybe Shaq and Kobe sat down and did a special on, I think it was on Turner, where it's very cordial and very polite. And then when Kobe had his last game, Shaq showed up and there were hugs and blah, blah, blah. And I think people tend to forget what it was like in the time period. Time tends to soothe things. So I think, I do think they forgot. I don't think they didn't know. I think they forgot. So, but it was really interesting. I mean, the one fight that you guys referenced, it happened in 2002, and I opened the book with it, and it was a fight between Kobe Bryant and Samaki Walker, a forward. And basically, the Lakers used to do this game where they would each during shoot around, they'd all take half court shots, and whoever made it first would get $100 from every player. And Kobe this day won. He's going around collecting money from every player. And Samaki Walker, forward with the team, is like, "I don't have money now. I'll pay you later." And he tries to get it later. And he's like, "Yo, I don't have your money. I'll get it to you later." Because not everyone walks around with a $100 bill in their pocket. And they're on a bus in Cleveland. And Kobe goes up to him and in the back of the bus and he says, "Yo, Maki, where's my money?" And Samaki Walker's like, "I'll get your fucking money when I have it." And Kobe reaches back and pops him in the face. And Samaki Walker is 6'9". Samaki Walker is not a small guy. And he's from, he's kind of a tough background. He's not a wilting flower. And he stands up and he said he was sitting next to Giuliani McCoy. And he goes to Giuliani McCoy, and I too will be quoting from the book. He goes, "Did this motherfucker just hit me in the face?" And Giuliani McCoy's like, "Yeah, he did." And Shaq is standing there, and Shaq goes, "Yo," just to Samaki Walker. He goes, "Yo, you got to fuck this guy up." And Samaki Walker goes, "Stop the bus. Stop the fucking bus." And Phil Jackson, all right, tells the bus drivers, "All right, stop the bus." They're in the middle of Cleveland. Samaki Walker's like, "All right, Kobe, right now, let's go. Let's go." And Kobe won't get off the bus. And Samaki Walker's basically says, "Yeah, I didn't think so, bitch." And they get back on the bus. They get to the hotel. And Samaki Walker gets to his hotel room. And there's a message on his phone in the room. And it's Kobe Bryant crying, like sobbing. "Yo, Maki, I don't know what got into me. I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry. Oh my God, I can't believe this." And then later at the arena, again, Kobe Bryant, really sad, crying and apologizing. And it really, like Samaki Walker, when he talked to me about the story, we met at a coffee shop in LA. And when he told me the story, he wasn't using it to dog Kobe Bryant. This is while Kobe was still alive. He wasn't using it to dog Kobe Bryant. He was saying it to explain that this guy, there are a lot of layers to this guy and a lot of complexities, and a lot of Kobe Bryant was trying to cover up for what he wasn't and trying to take on these different personas and build up this wall. And he just was never really comfortable with himself in a lot of ways. And, that was kind of Samaki Walker. He's trying to put up this tough guy front, but he really wasn't that tough.
Yeah. So fast forward to another fight, if you will, another physical confrontation, 2003 pickup game.
Yeah.
Shaq smacks the bejesus out of Kobe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have I can't remember his first name, but Polonese is saying you quote him saying that if Polonese was holding Shaq back, like Shaq hit Kobe, and then people immediately tried to intervene. Polonese is holding Shaq back. He's screaming at other people, "Somebody grab Kobe, somebody shut him up," or whatever. And he says in the book, if I had let him go, Shaq would have killed Kobe. Do you think Kobe was like, and people don't really think about this. Like, we think, we know they didn't like one another. There was like some tensions back and forth. But even though I was covering games like yourself during this time, I never saw any physical confrontations. So this was like taking me back. And it was like, wow, they really did not like one another. So in that confrontation, Shaq said, "I'll get you traded."
Yeah.
Do you think, if not for take the rape allegations out of the picture, because that set a new tone for the organization.
And you're referring to rape allegations against Kobe.
Against Kobe.
Make sure our audience knows. Yeah.
Do you think Shaq had the juice to get Kobe traded?
No, I do not. I don't. I mean, you can maybe make the argument if this were in Kobe's first 2 seasons, and they got like whatever, an offer of Scottie Pippen or something. You know, Pippen was always on the block. Maybe, but not really. I think, I mean, when Jerry West worked out, I mean, the whole Kobe coming to the Lakers thing was because Jerry West just thought this guy was a phenomenon, he was right.
Yeah.
I mean, like to go real quick, then 96 and Nets had the Kobe Bryant. It was a lock. We're going to take Kobe Bryant. And John Calipari was the. Do you ever deal with Cal?
Yeah, I've dealt with Cal, and if Greg Kelly is watching, he hates John Calipari. So yeah, I've dealt with Cal.
Yeah. Well, he was coach of the Nets, and they were set. They worked out Kobe 4 or 5 times and loved him, and they were set to take him. And John Nash was a GM. Kobe was Calipari was a coach. They work him out. They love him. They call Kobe's parents before the draft. How do you feel about us taking your son? Oh, that'd be great. That'd be awesome. Kobe, though, has a deal with Adidas already, and Adidas does not want him playing in East Rutherford, New Jersey. They want him, somewhere big. And the Lakers work him out twice, love him. Arn Tellem is Kobe's agent. Arn Tellem and Jerry West are very close. We'd love to get him to LA. Everyone wants him in LA. And Jerry West actually first calls the Nets and said, would you do a swap for the number 8 pick? Nets are like, no way. Jerry Weston calls Charlotte, who has the 13th pick, and says, would you do this deal Vlade for the pick? Yes, if you can yes, we'll do that, sure. So basically, Kobe calls John Calipari and says, the day before the draft, and says, yeah, coach, I don't want to play with you guys. I want to get away from my parents. It's total bullshit. That's what he said. Calipari freaks out. He goes into the GM's office, John Nash. He's like, John, what? I don't know what we're going to do. John Nash is like, calm down. It's just a bluff. His agent, Kobe's agent, calls Calipari. Cal, here's the thing. He doesn't want to play for you. He'll probably, if you guys take him number 8, he's going to go to Italy for the year. Calipari runs into the GM's office. Oh my God, what are we going to do? Cal, it's just a bluff. This is my favorite moment. I got this from Kendall Gill. Initially. Kerry Kittles. Hi, I love Kendall Gill. Kerry Kittles is represented by David Falk, who was Michael Jordan's agent. And he really wants to play for the Nets. And he's an All-American out of Villanova. So David Falk calls John Calipari and says, listen, if Kerry Kittles, my guy, is there at number 8 and you don't take him, I'm never going to have a free agent go to you again.
Oh, wow.
And Calipari's like, oh my God, what the hell is going on here? He runs into John Nash. John Nash is like, calm down. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Calipari's freaking out. The morning of the draft comes, and Calipari holds a meeting, and he says, with Nash and all the guys, he's like, here's what we're going to do. Kerry Kittles is there at number 8. We're taking Kittles. If he's not, we're taking Kobe Bryant. And John Nash Calipari in his contract had final personnel say over his GM. So John Nash is horrified. Kerry Kittles is there at number 8. They take Kerry Kittles. Kobe falls to Charlotte. And Jerry West says to Jerry Buss, the owner, as soon as this happens, he goes, I just got you the best player in this draft. I guarantee you. So Jerry West was always huge on Kobe. And I just don't think, even Shaq, I think they would have pushed as hard as possible to make it work out between the two of them, not trade him. Long-winded answer, but.
Wow. So there's a question online from Jacqueline Robson. How did the rape accusations impact the team?
First of all, it's the craziest season ever. It's 2003, 2004. I could have written a book about this season. That was the year when Karl Malone and Gary Payton both signed as free agents, so they make this super team, right? Shaq wants his contract renegotiated. The Lakers won't do it. There's a point during the preseason when Shaq is running down the court and Jerry Buss is sitting courtside and Shaq goes, pay me while doing this. Phil Jackson doesn't know whether he's going to be brought back. Kobe has basically decided, I'm going to go to the Clippers. Fuck the Lakers. I'm going to the Clippers. And he's also flying back and forth to Eagle, Colorado. And at one point in the preseason, Kobe is an Eagle, so he's not at training camp with the Lakers in Hawaii. And a reporter asked Shaq, are you upset not having your whole team here? And Shaq goes, Then there's another part. Say it again.
Now we lost you for a second there, but Shaq said our whole team is here.
Yeah, our whole team is here. Then there's another part. They're flying back from training camp, and Shaq and Kobe's not on the plane. This is one of my favorite moments. It's insane. I mean, it's gross, but it's insane. They're flying back to the mainland, and Shaq used to carry like DJ equipment with him, and he basically starts doing this freestyle rap to 50 Cent song "Pimp," but he calls it rape. So instead of P period, I period, M period, P, he calls it R period. You know, and I forgot the lyrics of it, but it was basically mocking Kobe Bryant about raping a girl. I mean, it was really dark. It got really dark. And they
three-ring circus.
I mean, the thing is, like, they didn't like Kobe at this point. Like, they did not like Kobe. Shaq couldn't stand Kobe. Most of the players couldn't stand Kobe. That doesn't mean Kobe's a bad guy when he died at 41, to be clear. But at this point in his life, he was a weird thing he did. He was flying back and forth to Eagle, Colorado for the trial, pre-trial. Now, he went to Eagle initially to get his surgery without telling the Lakers. It was knee surgery. Didn't tell the Lakers. Had sex or rape. We don't, know for sure with this young woman. He did that. That was on him. He's flying back and forth to Eagle, Colorado, and he's furious with the Lakers that they're not sending him using a nice enough plane to fly him back and forth. And I kept thinking when I was reading that, man, you are lucky they're not putting you middle seat Delta, making you pay. It's insane. So I just think the whole year was really negative, like really dark and negative. And I just think a lot of that was due to Kobe and his behavior. It was just a dark year. It was a really dark year.
Since we're on
Kobe. I think you mentioned this in the book. It exposed where Kobe sat with his teammates. Like, this was a guy who, got engaged without telling his teammates, as you mentioned in the book. Got engaged without telling his teammates, got married without inviting any of his teammates. None of his teammates had been to his home. He didn't hang out with any of them. He barely ate with them. And so when this came about, when the allegations came about that he had allegedly raped this young woman in the hotel room in Eagle, Colorado, the teammates were like, you mentioned that Phil Jackson, when Arden Tellem called Phil Jackson and was like, you're not going to believe this. Phil Jackson's like, no, I do believe it, because there's a dark side to Kobe, and he wasn't calling Kobe a rapist at all. But he said there's a dark side to Kobe that the public does not see, that only I, as his coach, and his teammates see. And I think that was a very poignant point to make in the book, because we often talk about these players as superstars, as the best ever, as GOATs or whatever, but we really don't get to see who they are when the lights go off,
right?
When the crowd.
Well, you know what's really interesting? I used to, a guy I think. I used to room in New York City with a guy named Russ Bankson, who was the editor of Slam magazine. And you know Russ, yeah. And
I was a Lakers story with Russ, but go ahead.
Oh, yeah, so I love Russ. And Russ and I went to Delaware together. We were friends at Delaware. And I remember, like, he was the editor of Slam magazine, and Slam was so cool and hip and dope and blah, 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 and all that stuff. And it was Iverson with the cornrows and the tats, and it was, the merging of hip hop and culture and basketball. And whenever they would put Kobe on, and we talked about this at the time, it was forced, because he wasn't really hip hop, and he wasn't, quote unquote street, and he didn't come from Newport News or from Coney Island. He was a guy from Italy and a guy from suburban Philadelphia, and he just wasn't authentic. And I just think a lot of what he was trying to do, and what a lot of Phil Jackson was talking about, that Sally Nation talked about, is sort of, he was always covering up. He was always covering up who he was and trying to be something he wasn't. And I just think when you grow up and you take Brandy to the prom, and Boys to Men are your press conference, going pro, and you get a shoe deal at 17.
I forgot it.
All that stuff.
I forgot he took Brandy to the prom.
To Brandy to the prom. He didn't even know Brandy, and he took her to the prom. Boys to Men are his press conference. He gets a shoe deal at 17. Like, he was raised in a bubble. Like, he was just raised in a bubble. He really was. And, like, I think what you see with a lot, I mean, I always think of, it sounds dumb, being a kid and loving different strokes, and then seeing Gary Coleman. I like Webster too. Gary Coleman's life path, and like the sadness, like being raised in a bubble, or like Ricky Schroeder, like all these people who are kids and they're raised to be this way, and they don't grow up normal. and they can't have a normal conversation and they struggle to relate. Like that was Kobe Bryant. And I even think the craziest part of that Eagle thing for me, reporting wise, was reading him. So he's approached by police officers, by two Eagle, Colorado sheriffs, detectives outside the hotel where he's staying. And it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And I detail this in the book a lot. Any functioning human being would say, I need my attorney. I need my attorney. I can't say anything without my attorney. And basically Kobe sits there and first he lies to them. They ask if he had sex with a woman. He says no. Then they're like, Kobe, you know, we gave her a rape test. And he's like, well, okay, here's the thing. Maybe I did. Okay, I did. Then they're trying to get him to take him back to his hotel room. They're like, look, Kobe, we don't want to do this in public. We want to do this in private. Let's go back to your room. Now, obviously, they're taking him back. You can see it. You see it all working like this. They're taking him back to the room because they want to be at the scene of the alleged crime. And he's like, okay, we'll do that. Why don't you tell your bodyguards they don't have to worry about it? They'll tell them not to come. Okay, I'll do that. Like, for a guy who is so clutch in the moment, and I'm not trying, I swear to God, I'm not trying to like step on a person who died. Like I think Kobe at 41, it's tragic and horrible, 100%. It's remarkable though, a guy who performed in the clutch so well. In this moment, he's sitting there and he just crumbles apart. And I just think when you saw him in the real world a lot of times, same thing, he gets caught in that situation and he has his press conference with his wife, Vanessa, and he presents her with this ridiculous ring. And it was like, it was the reaction of a adolescent. You know, it was the response of an adolescent. I'm going to get her this big ring and I'm going to present it to her in front of all these people.
Well, he
like,
hasn't really grown up yet.
He just hadn't grown up. And he's actually, say that again?
$4 million ring.
Yeah. My wedding ring cost $100. I think not even $100. I think it was $50. Yeah. I lost my first one. No, but the point is like, he just didn't know. He just didn't, like, he's almost, in a lot of ways, he's a tragic figure, right? In a lot of ways, he's a tragic figure because he didn't have the wherewithal and the development to handle things in a certain way. That doesn't excuse his behavior. I just think it's kind of sad. And a lot of times I kept thinking when I was reporting on Kobe, like the word I kept thinking was pathetic, and not pathetic in like, he's an asshole or he's like, it's so pathetic. The effort, you so badly need to be this image that you can't allow yourself to be yourself, or maybe you don't even know who you are. And there's something just sad about that, you know?
So Kobe, of course, this year has been one of the worst years ever, but the death of Kobe started out this year when he died on January 26th. And your book actually starts out with an author's note about that.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk to like your personal relationship with Kobe and maybe some memories you've had with Kobe, if you had one?
I don't actually. So I spent 2 years reporting on the book. Early on in the project, I was told by someone who knows Kobe really well and works with Kobe, that your odds of getting him are almost zero. And then I did everything I could to try to get him, and my odds were clearly zero. And I think a big part of that is just Eagle, Colorado, and him not wanting to discuss it. He also had a book come out around that time called The Mamba Mentality. Mm-hmm. You know, and I always say, like I've said this for years, nobody owes it to an author to talk to them for a book. Like he's not making any money off of it. He doesn't get final editorial say, and it's going to cover a lot of turf that he's not going to want to have covered. So I always understand that. So you report the hell out of it is what you do. So I got tons of Shaq, tons of Phil, most of the teammates, went back to Kobe's early years, interviewed as many people as I can, researched the hell out of it. There was a really good book written years ago called Showboat by Roland Lazenby about Kobe. You just research the best you can. But as far as personal Kobe experiences, I don't have many.
Okay. Robbie, I want to get you in. I want to get Rob in for a question. Robbie?
I have a curiosity question. All right.
Okay.
2 basketball books, both Lakers. Are you a Lakers fan? And if not, what's your brand?
I'm not a Laker fan at all, actually. I don't hate them, but I don't know. A lot of my fandom in sports was lost when I started working at Sports Illustrated, actually. Yeah, that really happened, though. That really happened. Like I would be covering. I remember one time. So I was mainly a baseball writer at SI, and I remember covering a game, and a friend of mine from college said, "Man, that's so cool! You got to cover your favorite team." And I was like, wait, what do you mean? And I had to think about it. And he's like, oh yeah, the team I rooted for when I was a kid. I just kind of lost it. So I wrote about the Lakers because they're a great organization to write about. The Buss family has been traditionally very good to deal with. I live in Southern California, but am I a diehard Laker fan? By no means. It's just a subject for me.
Any other basketball dynasties that you're planning on covering in the future?
No, my next book is a book about a biography of Bo Jackson, long ago, Raider fans.
I want to know that.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Oh no!
Yeah, so that's been really fun.
There's this mysticism behind Bo Jackson, and I don't think people really know.
But what about a trilogy? Like at some point, let's say, for example, if LeBron and Antonio Davis go on to win next year and the following year and create a dynasty, would you consider the third installment to the Lakers, Jeff Pearlman arsenal?
For those that don't know, the Lakers did just win the NBA championship for this year.
Hey, they did? You know what? I don't know. I don't think, just being totally honest, like the NBA is just a different land than it used to be when we were sort of active and doing sports. Like it's much more protective. It's much more guarded. I'll give you a quick story. I was working, so the Lakers PR guy used to be a guy named John Black. And, John had his imperfections, but I know. But when I was working on that Showtime book, he couldn't have been more helpful. Okay. I'm just saying, who do you need? What do you need? Blah, 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 blah. This book, they were a beast. The Lakers were hard. Jeannie Buss is still my favorite owner in sports. I have nothing bad to say about her. She's the best, right? They changed PR departments. They did a major makeover. Mark Madsen was an assistant coach of the Lakers as I was reporting this. And the Lakers, after a lot of calling, and they said, oh, you can come up and talk to Mark after practice. Mark Madsen might be the nicest human being on the planet. He's just a truly decent guy, former Laker forward, just a great guy. And I go up, and we're talking. Practice is over. They're not on the road the next day. They don't even have a game that night. Nothing going on. I'm talking with Mark. He's great. I'm about maybe 12 minutes in, and I see the PR person behind me going like this. And she wasn't doing it for any reason except like in her mind, 12 minutes with Mark Madsen was enough. And it wasn't like this was LeBron or Anthony Davis or even whoever, Frank Vogel. It was freaking Mark Madsen. And the worst part is Mark Madsen was so happy to be talking. It was great. And I just think, I almost don't blame her because that's what the NBA has become in a lot of ways. It has become a really tough place to cover. And they're so guarded and so protective. And so it's kind of like you see when people are worried about what would happen when teams ran their own social media and, would this mean the end of media? What hasn't meant the end of it, but it means they can control their own media much better and their own messaging much better. But when it's crazy, it's like, it's Mark Madsen. It's like the third guy over on the assistant coach chain, he's happy to be talking and there's no threat. It's just great. That's when you're like, ugh. So it's the idea of going through it again with more modern athletes. I don't know.
All right, we've got about 2
Maybe.
minutes.
I think LeBron will
ask another question.
I think that's been like the case overall with sports. Like it's much harder now in 2020 to cover a story, to get interviews, to get canned interviews and answers than when I first started in '98, when you were, at the height of your career, in the late '90s, early 2000s at Sports Illustrated. I can't even imagine me going into a locker room now and trying to get an interview without having to, delve through all of the minutia, if you will. But thinking about this book, do you think, has either Shaq or Phil Jackson reached out to you or commented that you know of about this book, about Three-Ring
Right, so
Circus?
it's actually funny. All right, so the other day, the first Laker to actually say anything publicly was Mark Madsen, who was interviewed on a podcast. And, you're always nervous. And he said, he raved about it. He was like, I learned stuff in that book I didn't even know, and I was there, which is the best thing you can hear as a writer isn't like, I loved it or I hated it. It's I learned stuff I didn't know. That's like the number one compliment you can get, especially from people who are involved with the team. Phil Jackson, it's funny. So Phil Jackson about a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago was, so I spent 8 hours with Phil Jackson in Montana. It was the best. It was really a joyful experience for me. And, you remember he was like, there was a day when he was rumored to maybe be in consideration for the Clippers job. I don't know if you guys remember that, but that happened briefly, very briefly. He was rumored, and I get an email from him that day, and he wrote, "Hey, what was the name of the book you told me I should read? The baseball book. What was that called again?" And I was like, "A False Spring." And I said to, I think my wife, I was like, "He's not taking the Clippers job because there's no way he'd be emailing me about a book on the day he was supposed to be taking the Clippers job." But like, you know, we sent books to all the Laker players. We sent books, you know, just for PR reasons, sent books to Turner. I barely heard anything. I think most of these guys, being honest, probably don't read it. I asked Shaq about one of his books he wrote. He wrote a book. It was actually really good called Shaq Talks Back with Mike Wise. And it was a really good book from the era. And I asked him about it. He's like, "Yeah, didn't read it." And I was like, "Yeah, you wrote it."
We have to, unfortunately, we're out of time. I did want to have one question that I just want your opinion on. So, of course, they would not have won, they wouldn't have done their 3P without Shaq and Kobe. But my question is, do you think they would have done it without 7-time champion Robert Horry?
No, Robert Horry was hugely important.
Thank you.
Hugely important. It's always funny. You know how like there are always guys who it's like, we couldn't have won it without you. Like when the Lakers won that second round with Kobe and Adam Morrison was on the team, and everyone was kind of making fun of Adam Morrison being on the bench, and Kobe would be like, "We couldn't have won it with Adam Morrison helping us out in practice." It's like, yeah, you could have. But Robert Horry is actually one of those guys. Like, I mean, he was their clutch shooter.
He was.
I love Robert Horry. What I loved about Horry is he's like, he was asked once, how are you so unafraid to take big shots? And his reply was, "If I make them, I make them. If I miss, I miss." And I just thought that actually perfectly sums up what clutch shooters all have in common, which is they're unafraid to miss because the repercussions of such doesn't really bother them that much, you know?
All right. I saw you had one last question. Go ahead, Lizzie.
Dang, you made me forget what the question was. Oh, do you think if he had not died in that horrible accident in January of this year, do you think Kobe would have read this?
I do, actually. I think he was more likely to than Shaq. It's funny. It's not funny, actually. First of all, as I always say, I really sincerely 1,000,000% obviously mean this, I would trade this book's existence for that to have never happened. You know, like to me, it was one of the most tragic. I mean, it's beyond tragic, and all the people and his daughter. So, but I will say it's always awkward when you have a book come out and it's heavily critical of a character or a person. Him dying, you don't have that awkwardness. You know what I mean? Like, it's not because he's not, but it's so freaking sad. Like, it's so profoundly sad.
It's so sad.
But he's not.
It's sad.
Oh, it is unbelievable. It hangs over everything. And like, it hangs over. I've never written a book, obviously, where the main protagonist dies after the book came out. And it just, the sadness of that and the tragedy of that hangs over this entire thing. It just sucks. It's just the freaking worst. It's such a weird year that it feels like that was 5 years ago, but it's so freaking
feel like it's been forever.
Right?
Right? I had to make sure that it happened this year. I had to actually double check.
It's so weird. It's so weird. Yeah.
All right.
So,
well, I wanted you to last words in, Jeff. Anything you'd like to say? Tell people, where to find you, etc.
Buy the book. I just want to thank Elizabeth Newman for teaching me everything I've ever known about sports and life, and and the Lakers. And thank you guys for having me on. This has been really fun. You know, I'm a huge Elizabeth Newman fan, probably the biggest. So I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
We are too.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Thanks.
All right.
All right. We're ready for the next book. Do Bo right. Do Bo right.
I'm gonna try.
No.
I do my best.
No.
All right. Again, the book is 3-Ring Circus by Jeff Pearlman. Make sure you check out jeffpearlman.com or amazon.com.
Amazon, #1 sports book on Amazon, people.
Thank you again, Jeff, for joining us.
All right. Take care, guys.
Yeah.
Word.
Wow.
It's so funny when you have interviews that run long, but they don't feel long.
It didn't feel long at all. I'm looking, I'm like, wow, it's already, time has passed. That was a great conversation.
Stories, because a lot of the things that Jeff talked about in the book, a lot of the events, a lot of the NBA championships that he talked about in the book, both he and I were there for. And so it was like going down memory lane. So he and I could have just gone story
I
for
know,
story.
right?
Remember?
I was trying to get Rob B in there. I'm like, wait a minute.
It was just their personal anecdotes. He was there for a lot of it and behind the scenes. And what I really appreciated was what he shared about, that's the best thing you can hear from a writer is someone, hey, I learned something about that and I was there. I was part of this, but I learned something that I didn't know about. And it's true. Like, I love people watching Gathering Stories too. I thought that was just it was a pinnacle moment for him. I was happy for him. It's pretty cool.
And I have to say, and this was the final, thought or note from me. I remember January 26, 2020, like it was yesterday. It was I just started school at Howard. So it was a Sunday that was off. I slept in that day. I didn't find out about Kobe until about maybe an hour and a half after the announcement was released, if you will. And after the initial shock, and I was completely shocked. And I grew up covering this kid. Wasn't necessarily a Kobe fan, but I understood his greatness. And I mean, I was speechless, which is very rare for me. And then after going over what happened and then understanding that not only Kobe died, but his 13-year-old daughter, and then 7 other
That's
people.
the thing that bothered me the most is that his daughters, the children, but you know how I am with children.
I immediately thought about Jeff because I knew the book was near its finish. And I was just like, oh my, like, how does this affect this story? And that's the journalist in me talking, and I don't mean to say that as someone who is insensitive or whatever, but as journalists, we do kind of gravitate towards a story. I thought about Jeff and I thought about, okay, well, what does this do for his book? Because he's been working on this for a very long time. I don't know how this is going to go over, but I mean, as someone who, again, was not a Kobe fan, covered him a lot, been to games, whatever, but that moment on January 26th, like, took me outside of myself for a bit.
I just want to get a few comments in.
And I think that was the case for a lot of people in this country.
From online before we move on. So Mike Winter says these stories about old Kobe are why it took me so long to soften on him. Liz and I must have talked about this stuff. LaRon Pearsall said, "Yeah, I remember Slam." And Jacqueline Robinson says, "I remember that Brandy prom date." Winter says also, "Kobe needed to be more like Grant Hill instead of trying to front like he was all hard. So I had to concentrate on the behavior."
But he and Grant Hill had different things to prove, if you will. Like, there's a difference between Grant and Kobe. People respected Grant. Grant wasn't drafted as an 18-year-old who didn't go to college.
Right.
Kobe was drafted out of high school. And I think that led to a lot of his insecurities because people constantly question his ability.
Yep. Ron Pearsall said, "Kobe's still the greatest. See you, Liz." All right.
Hey, LaRon.
Let's get into hot topics.
Shenanigans.
All right. So, straight on the hot topic. This is the way hot topics works. I'll pick one of our hosts. They will let you know if their topic is a truth, a lie, or shenanigan. Then we'll talk about it until we see our friend Gingy.
Gingy been out all day.
And Gingy will let us know the time is up. And then we'll look online to get your questions and comments, and we'll talk about it for just a little bit more. Once we're done, we'll go on to the next host and their topic. So today we are going to talk Ice Cube with Lizzie. Is this truth, lie, or shenanigan?
It's a truth. And y'all can go on and give me my ticket, but I'm quoting him. We are going to talk about Ice Cube, straight out of Compton. Crazy motherfucker called Ice Cube. That's quoting.
You get a little liberal with these quotes.
So Ice Cube has been in the news lately. A lot of controversy surrounding Ice Cube and his contract with Black America that he has proposed to both the Trump White House and to Democrats. The question has become, what do we make of this 11th hour proposal. Specifically, and this is something that I have asked consistently over the past couple of weeks, where was Ice Cube before? And I think he first proposed this contract back in June, July. As Black people in this country, we have been, trying to bash Trump out for the past 4.5 years, if you will. Where's Ice Cube been all this time? So first question to the panel and to, our viewing audience here, listening audience here, what do you make of Ice Cube and his contract with Black America? Which is a very detailed contract. I think in the contract there are 13 significant points that he makes. What do you make of Ice Cube's contract with Black America, his demands for both parties, but he specifically was leaning towards the Trump party, that he would work with the Trump party, if you will. What do you make of this at the 11th hour?
I read part of his contract with Black America, but it's a very long contract, so I didn't read it all. But I like the concept, but there are problems with it. It's a good start. I mean, it's something to consider. It's a good start. Actually, we have a clip. Do you want me to play the clip real quick?
Play the clip real quick.
Okay.
You can play it.
Figure out why we continue to, flounder at the bottom. What is it? And what I found is that it's systems in place. The system is fucked up. It's just designed. Not only designed, but there's a dedication to keeping us at the bottom of this country. I don't know if we can count on any parties to get us about the shit, to be honest. We have to think about ourselves. We love all the other races of the world, but at some point we got to figure out how do we get ahead, because everybody's on top of us. I don't trust none of them. No president has done right by us. We got to make them do what we want them to do. And the Democrats they've been nice, they've been cordial, so to speak. They're still talking this minority, people of color shit. That don't necessarily include Black Americans, especially descendants of slaves. So, I think the Democrats, they got every Black celebrity and shit on their team, so they just figure, tell Q to shut the fuck up and vote. I ain't gonna do that. I'm gonna push the program. We also met with the Republicans and shit. They brought us in. They've moved their agenda a lot because of what we said. They put $500 billion on the table, and we gotta just push whoever is in there, because ain't nobody really solved our problems. People say we can't take another 4 years of this. Black people, we can take anything, shit. Everybody can be mad at me, pissed off at me. I'm trying to get to the truth. Ain't nobody gonna get me to back down.
All right. So based upon what he was saying, I mean, he said some good things in there. I mean, he has a good concept, but I think he's going about it all wrong. One of the things that took offense with was Black people can take anything. So I don't know where, like you just mentioned, where was he when we were going through it? And we've been dealing with Trump for 4 years, and why would you willingly subject? I mean, who is he to speak for Black people first, and then why would you willingly subject yourself to, Trump? I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. Robbie, if you want to say anything?
Yeah, I'm gonna give it to Rob before I go off. I'm gonna give it to Rob.
Well, during the video clip, and one of the things that I found interesting is that we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard. This kind of ideology, which is fantastic. Now that he's on top, 35 years into his career, and he has his money, but if you hit rewind on his career, was he part of the cultural issue at the time? Because when he started out his career, he was glorifying gang violence. It was N-word this, N-word that. And, would he be willing to renounce that volume of work to say we need to hold each other to a higher standard and redistribute that part of his wealth as part of the contract?
Before you comment, Lizzie, I just want to make a point for Robbie. I mean, he was talking, a lot of negativity and things like that for the Black community back then, but he was also telling stories about what was going on in the Black community. So when you look at like the George Floyds and you look at the all the police violence going on, those have been happening for years, decades. And he was telling a lot of those stories back then, like when he was doing, F the police and all the other, I mean, those, he was telling the stories that we couldn't see on video. So he was doing a little bit of both. So he was demeaning the black community, but at the same time, he was telling stories of what was happening in the black community at the time. So, go ahead, Lizzie. I know you want to go off. Go ahead.
So first and foremost, let me just say, Ice Cube, and I think he kind of hinted at that at this point that I'm about to make in that video clip where he talked about, I'm not going to all of a sudden, vote for whatever, when I think it's, fair to infer that he hasn't been voting in the past by his own admission. And these words came out of, this explanation came out of his mouth, not from me, that he only got involved in politics within the last year. So that means back in 2015, when the Tea Party decided to form, and when Donald Trump aligned with the Tea Party and decided to put forth this birtherism movement, where he was denouncing Barack Obama's legitimacy, one, as an American, but two, as an American who had rights to vote in this country, whether he was legitimate in this country, you said nothing. When Donald Trump decided that he was going to challenge Barack Obama's birth certificate, whether he was going to challenge his admission to both Harvard and that he was going to, no, you said nothing. So I have a problem with someone who, again, even if you take into account that he started with this contract over the summer, you're jumping late into the game.
Yeah.
And you're not keeping up with how Black people have been viewing politics, have been a part of politics in this country, at least for the past 4 years. So why would I take you seriously now? Think about even last week. We had two, people, President Donald Trump, who called Kamala Harris a monster, again, a Black woman who went to a HBCU. And then you had the senator from Nebraska who called Kamala Harris, who mocked her name, if you will, however you say it, which Trump had, Kalama Lama Lama Lama, Kalama Lama Lama, which Trump had done previously a few months ago. Never said anything about that. Never said anything about him reneging on the contract with HBCUs. Never said anything about him, coming out and mocking and shaming the squad. So I don't understand why. I get that you want a contract. I get that you want to hold this government accountable for the lives of persons of color, specifically Black people in this country. But why would you initially hoist up, well, if, and he said this, if I don't get blah, 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 I may not vote. My vote isn't automatically going to go to Biden. I could very well vote for Trump. Why would you even consider voting for Donald Trump at this point, given all of that backstory?
I just want to point out one comment that made me laugh while you were talking. It was Kevin Thaxton who said, did I miss the election for Black leadership?
That was my question pre-show. At what point was Ice Cube?
Apparently there was, and Ice Cube made this contract, and you could tell in his interview with Roland Martin, you could tell he wasn't even comfortable talking about the contract.
There were yesterday. I think it was yesterday with Roland Martin, right?
Maybe Friday. But a lot of pauses, Neo. A lot of confusion when Roland Martin would challenge him or ask him about specific things within the contract. He couldn't answer.
I don't even think he knows what's in his full contract, or at least very much he probably doesn't understand what's in his contract, and you could tell by the way he was talking about it.
When asked how his contract differs from Trump's contract, to how it differs from Biden's contract, which Biden and his team put forth back in May. Silence. He couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
The $500 billion that he mentioned, Roland Martin was like, that's not on the table. That was countrywide. That was not any group specific. That was countrywide. So let's move this to the side. And so here is a guy who hasn't done his research, who never
He said he learned in his thing. He said he learned something new, but he learned about politics and he's trying to get the truth and all that. When you listen to him talk, you can tell he doesn't fully understand. I mean, I am no expert on politics, but I certainly understand significantly more than he does at this point. Now, I want to just go ahead, Robbie. Go ahead, Robbie. I know.
Just in that light, I just want to mention to the audience that the clip that we watched, Neo edited it down from about
9 minutes.
8 minutes, 9-minute segment, just because of the amount of pausing. So you had to really
a lot of uhs and
reflect in that silence. So yeah, he really. I mean, it would be daunting to try to remember everything in that contract, but you should at least remember the main talking points.
I like the thought process. I like what he's trying to accomplish. But and he mentioned a disparity between white America and Black America, where he talked about the wealth gap for $1 for every. Basically, Black people have $1 for every $10 for white people. That's true. So his efforts are commendable, and I actually don't mind him going to Republicans per se to find out if they might embrace his agenda. But I do mind him going to make deals with the devil himself, the devil being Trump. And I believe, and I think he really is ignorant because he doesn't realize he is nothing more than a pawn. And you were alluding to that.
As was noted earlier this week, when the Trump spokesperson or spokeswoman came out and gave this whole speech or tweeted how she was thanking Ice Cube for consulting with Trump or whatever, and Ice Cube had to come back afterwards and I've never met this woman before. Yeah. So that should be an early indication about how they are not authentic. They are not trustworthy.
There's a ton of comments online about this, and I actually had one more thing I wanted to point out. So, one thing he did accomplish is there's a lot of people talking about it. So he's got people talking.
It's good to get people talking, but you have to, do your homework when people are talking about it.
That's true too. I mean, I do. I have to point out one very important thing, because these conversations that he had with Trump led to Trump's platinum plan for Black people. I just want to show this graphic really, really quick. So, for example, we have 3 million new jobs for the Black community. And, in the first 2 years, Trump praised himself for being the best ever for Black Americans with 700,000 new jobs. Yet, he's saying he's going to add 3 million. Now, Obama added 3 million, but that took his entire 2 terms to do it. And then he's talking about this 500 new Black-owned businesses. I want to just point out, by doing that, he's going to, quote, encourage onshoring and development of domestic manufacturing to increase supply chain business development, meaning that he'll encourage the growth of other, likely white-owned businesses that may work with Black-owned businesses to build up other Black-owned businesses. So, I mean, this is all BS. I mean, I was recently watching Childish Gambino's musical movie called Guava Island. Really bad movie, by the way. really bad movie. But he said one
on that African American. But go ahead.
He said there was one thing that resounded to me where he said, and this was just before he sang his song "This Is America." He said, America's the place where the only way to get rich is to make someone else richer. So this trickle down plan that Trump is trying to do is all it is making them richer, and then maybe Black people will get a leg up. That's what his plan is all about.
For our Black listeners out there, who may be African American, who may be Haitian American, who may be Jamaican American, Dominican American, Black Africans or whatever, pay attention to what Ice Cube said. He said his plan for Black America is specifically about a certain group of Black people in America. Okay, he's talking about ADOS. I never know how to pronounce it, so please forgive me if I'm mispronouncing it. But ADOS means American descendants of slavery. Mm-hmm. It means if you were African American and your ancestors were enslaved in this country. It does not mean African people, Black Africans who are coming here from another country, from a country in Africa. It does not mean Black people who are coming from the Caribbean, who are coming from Latin America or other places. It specifically means Black African Americans, which the police don't decipher.
Yep.
Where you came from.
Stereotypes still exist no matter, just because of skin color. So when you come to America, you get the same stereotypes and racism regardless of where you came from.
And so his plan for Black America wouldn't even include Kamala Harris, the future vice president of the United States. So again, I say this to the people who are just like Cube. Like we need to start holding people accountable for, like, it's good to have a plan, but it has to be a well thought out plan. He never consulted with any Black activists in this country, with any Black politicians in this country. He certainly didn't call my ass to ask me if this was my plan for Black America. So we got to be better about this, especially when we are dealing with government. This is big time. This is government. And so, yeah, I've been calling him out from day one. I don't care if people have called me names for calling him out. And I have been called names this week, and I called some names back. But we have to think, critically about this. Yeah. Because this is a guy who never paid attention to how we were seen in politics before May, June. Didn't care, wasn't paying attention. And even when he called out, or when given the opportunity to speak about his platform with Roland Martin, he could barely do it. I could talk about my shoe closet.
I mean, you're right. I mean, and I want to point out, he talks about this $500 billion, and the way you could tell he didn't know what he was talking about. He talks about this $500 billion, right? So let me see what it says. So this is what he actually, the plan actually says, that Trump would seek infrastructure funding that will lead to growth in the annual $500 billion federal contracting opportunities. So the existing $500 billion federal contracting opportunities, they're saying that they would seek infrastructure that might lead to, again, more Black-owned businesses or Black-owned businesses getting access to that existing $500 billion of federal contracting opportunities. So he's not putting $500 billion into the Black communities. He's just saying, hey, we have $500 billion existing. We'll give you a little bit more. That's what they're saying. So it's BS all around.
Their infrastructure
investment doesn't even get it.
And infrastructure investors means pre-existing corporations that are already there are going to get surpluses and bonuses and incentives to help the little guys out. And if the little guy fails or succeeds, they're still making money and they still look the part.
Well, and even the money that he, promised for, historically Black colleges and universities is now, up for debate and question. The legitimacy of that is, being questioned right now. Like this is a president that is a known liar. He's already lied to you about, how you were represented in the way you guys communicated. You don't know the spokesperson who came out this week and said, thank you, Ice Cube. You don't even know her. So why are you believing this? And why are you expecting me? Why are you expecting the Black community to believe this? to fall for this. Like, we got to go back to the drawing board, people. This is
There are
not.
some people in the black community that are falling for it, but that's because, again, that's why we have to have these conversations. We have to bring some realism to what this rhetoric from Trump and this idiocy from the Republicans. Anyway, let me get to a couple of comments online so we can. Mike Winter says just say it again.
I said, and then we're going to talk about the Russians.
Briefly, we're going to try to get that in. But Mike Winter says, just like small business money went to the majority-owned large companies as opposed to small businesses. Jacqueline Robinson said, you said the operative words, critical thinking. Cube should work with organizations that already have the infrastructure in place who can adapt to the so-called plan. And that's something that was mentioned to Cube on Roland Martin's interview. Kevin Thaxton said, putting O'Shea in the bin of mofos, the I don't trust politically. That I don't trust.
So for those who don't know, Ice Cube's government name is O'Shea. His first name is Joe Shea.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Or as Dr. Dre called it, I was talking to my bitch O'Shea. That was from Dr. Dre. Another quote.
A day says Trump's platinum plan should be called as Roland Martin puts it, the aluminum foil plan. Exactly. Circus says, now tell me what's specific about the dollar bill, Neo, when you say whites have more for every dollar than we have. Was all the blacks or descendants of slaves? Not following the question on that one, but all it is it's saying that as far as wealth goes, when you look at the wealth difference between black and white, if a black person has $1, white people have $10 in America. That's the way. That's just
my last point. Where is Baby Cube? Y'all know I love Ice Cube's son. Where is Baby Cube? Where is Baby Cube? I love that fool.
Great interaction online, guys. Great interaction online. All right, Robbie, I still want to, I know we said we might drop it, but let's at least tell us what's going on, and let's get a comment or two in. Let's see what you got going on.
All right, so this is
Shenanigans.
This is some true shenanigans. This is like some beautifully scripted stuff. So when Giuliani went on his fact-finding mission in Hungary, top security advisors warned him that not to do it because he would be susceptible to Russian misinformation, that there would be a lot of plant stories, that it wasn't worth the trip. Giuliani went anyway, and he found some dirt on the Biden family, which top security advisors said, no, this is Russian misinformation, this is wrong. The information still made its way to the POTUS, who willingly took it very gleefully. And again, top security advisors told him, this is Russian misinformation meant to disrupt the electoral process. And your POTUS still chose to share this information publicly. So this quote that I found from CNN encapsulates it wonderfully. President Donald Trump is a consistent creature in a lot of respects, especially when it comes to helping Russia and hurting the U.S. For years, Trump has engaged in behavior that makes Russian President Vladimir Putin's job of sowing discord, spreading disinformation, and undermining our democracy a lot easier, especially when Trump thinks it might benefit him. So, really, to me, this is, I guess the question to the audience and the panel is this deliberate collusion on both part of Trump and Giuliani?
No question. No question. I mean, like Lizzie said in the beginning, I kind of do what I'm going to say, because I truly believe we're going to look at they got to go to jail. I mean, I figure Biden might end up pardoning Trump just because you don't want to have a former president go to jail, American president, because it just doesn't look good. But I'd like to at least see him prosecuted. I mean, these people have been lying, colluding, cheating, all the above for the last 4 years. It's the worst administration probably, I don't know, maybe ever. It might be ever.
Let me just say, and I'm not sure, Rob, if you have seen my posts about Hunter Biden, but I've been very critical of Hunter Biden, but it's mostly been things in his personal life, not as it relates to, politics, if you will. But I question the American people. I question all of these, Republicans out there who keep bringing up this Hunter Biden bullshit. How are you?
All right, now that is not a quote.
With more disdain than you do.
We got her, guys. $10 more.
Who has been impeached? We have a president who's been impeached, who is a proven liar.
Why are other Democrats not mentioning that he's been impeached? Why is that not like?
Because you're absolutely right. Because we're weak. Because I'm not running the party. Because let me tell you, I would be going for the jugular here. Like, why are we consistently talking about this? Again, give me another $10. Like Evelyn Lozado from Basketball Wives is a non-motherfucking factor. It's been proven. It's been disproven.
That's twice.
Disproven. So why are we even talking about this? We have a president who's been impeached, who is, every time he speaks, we got to fact check him. I had one of his fact checkers speak to my politics class over the summer because she had to explain her process about how she has to be on every single time he speaks, he tweets, whatever. But yet we want to go back to, some Hunter Biden stuff that's been disproven already. And Rob, one of the things that really was disheartening that came out in this was the text messages and emails that they produce between Hunter and Joe Biden, where Hunter was, apologizing for his addictions, was apologizing for being a burden to him. Like that, to me, I'm like, what? This is off limits. This has nothing to do with politics. This is a son who is in peril right now. And you guys are putting this on the front. Rudy Giuliani married one of his ex-wives is his former cousin. His cousin. Are we gonna put that out there? Like, why are we doing this? Like, it makes no sense whatsoever.
Loving the comments online. Robbie, did you want to say anything real quick?
No, I guess really the only thing that I would ask from you, Neo, is if you have them ready, just to share his daughter's tweets real quick.
Yep, I do have them ready. Because I think his daughter is, yeah.
Hey, girl. Hey, girl. How you doing? I mean, but you know,
did you want to say anything?
His son has spoken out against him as well. Giuliani's son has spoken out against him as well. This is a guy who, cheated on their mother with his third wife, and used to parade her around New York like she was the Queen of Sheba, even before he was divorced. So yeah, these kids, they know what's up. They know their dad is who.
Yeah. So in this tweet, you're looking at Carolyn Rose Giuliani with picture with
Kamala.
I got it right.
Hey, girl.
I almost messed it up. And then the second one here, you got. He says, while there's some momentum here, a reminder to please donate to help start turning this. I can quote this shit around. It's a matter of life.
And take 10 points off my score.
No, we should be adding, if we're doing quotes, we should be adding like $50.
So, Rob, what about Caroline Giuliani and Claudia Conway, Kellyanne Conway's daughter? What if they had a reality show?
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Their parents.
Oh, wow. Yeah. It begs the question, like, are these the actions of rebellious, petulant children or those of truly concerned Americans?
I think both. Wouldn't you be a petulant child in that environment, in that house?
Oh, yeah.
So a couple of comments online. Rupka says, yes, impeach should come up in every debate and town hall, just like the word China. China. Mike Winter says a non-factor. Lizzie 2024. That's from a dad. Jacqueline says, if anything, it makes Biden look like a parent who loves his messy child unconditionally, as opposed to the orange parent who groomed his kids to be criminals just like himself. Very true.
Well said, Jacqueline. I like that.
Okay, great topics, guys. We got to move on. Now, I have to close it out with
Truth, Lies, Shenanigans.
I have to close it out with a game, but we're going to keep this game really short. You ready? All right. So, for Shenanigans, the game show, it's quiz show. Real simple. Just going to ask you some simple questions, multiple choice answers, and you get them right, you get a point. Person with the most points wins and gets the final thought. Say it again.
Nothing.
All right. So for example, who built the ark to escape the big flood? Moses, Adam, Noah, David.
Noah.
It's gonna be a floody.
All right. So we're gonna go around and we'll go with Lizzie. Shuttlecock is used in what sport? Badminton, archery, cricket, or golf? Lizzie. A shuttlecock.
Badminton.
Badminton. That is correct. All right, let's go and get. All right, we're just gonna keep the score in our heads. So you got a point, Lizzie. All right, Rob B. Which famous actor, American musician, was fatally shot by his father on April 1st, 1984? John Lennon, Stevie Wonder, Notorious B.I.G., Marvin Gaye.
Marvin Gaye.
I was gonna say you got to get this right. Good job.
1 point.
All right, for me, in 1893, which country became the first to give women the right to vote? Sweden, New Zealand, USA, Canada. 1893. This is going to be a random guess. I'm going with Sweden. Is it Canada? It's probably Canada. Or New Zealand. I knew it was one of those two.
Yeah.
Darn it. All right, so I've got 0. All right. Which is the largest African country by area in Africa, Lizzie? Sudan, Algeria, Egypt, Libya. By area. Sudan, I believe you are right. Oh, it's Algeria. All right. Robbie, you can take the lead here. In 1967, what band released the hit song How do you get 2 music ones back to back? In 1967, what band released the hit song Ruby Tuesday? Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, The Who, or the Rolling Stones?
Stones,
okay. Oh, you get 2.
They don't like me, y'all. They don't like me.
All right. At what temperature is Celsius and Fahrenheit equal? This is for me. At what temperature? I'm going with got to be negative 40. I'm going with negative 40.
Give the man a point.
Ha! I got a point. Okay, this is the last round. Let's see where we go.
See what they did here.
Canada. So we can tie it up, Lizzie. We can try to tie it up. Canada is made up of how many provinces? 7, 21, 10, or 14? At least Rob didn't get this one.
Right?
Canada's made up of how many provinces? We are gonna go with 21.
21. Probably 14.
Rob is looking like hell no.
10 provinces. All right, Rob B. You can win it all with this one. What movie did Elvis Presley first appear in? Speedway, Jailhouse Rock, Viva Las Vegas, or Love Me Tender?
I think it was
a music one, though.
I think it was a crappy one about cars. I think it was Speedway.
Let's see. You are incorrect. I have one chance to tie it. The movie was, I didn't see what it was. I went too fast. Trying to tell our podcast. Which year did the Soviet Union collapse? 1994, 91, 1986, or 1989? I believe it was 89? It was either 89 or 86. 91?
91.
Oh, Rob B. Congratulations. Rob B, you come out the winner.
I didn't get the good questions. Oh my God.
Kevin Thatcher played along. He had Sweden. See? Badminton, Sweden. Oh, Mike Winter played along. Sudan split into 2 countries. Oh, see?
I didn't live in Sweden. I lived in Finland. I didn't live in Sweden.
See, Mike Winter knew that Sudan split into 2 countries. All right. Good job, Rob. Good job, Rob B. All right, let's get some shout outs in. Let's get some shout outs.
Nigeria.
All right, Lizzie, any shout outs?
I just want to shout out to my friends and family out in Colorado. They are dealing with a horrible, horrible forest fire situation. Denver, Boulder, mountains, all of the surrounding areas. I love you guys. Please be safe. Everyone, just do what you can to keep these fires in check. Now we have, 3 states, California, Oregon, and now Colorado. Like, my heart goes out to everyone involved. Love y'all. Love y'all.
All right, Robbie.
Wow, hard to top that one. But yeah, shout out to really just to friends and family everywhere who are doing their thing, who are getting by day. Just keep at it. It's we're all in this together. Everyone, U.S. side, please vote. Vote early. Vote once, not often. One time.
Yep. My shout out goes to all those people that are standing in line doing their early voting, especially down in Georgia, standing 3-hour-long lines to go vote. Do what you got to do. Get out there to vote. And also my shout out goes to people like More Than a Vote who are trying to go against voter suppression, work against voter suppression, because it's happening out there. Like I said, in Georgia, 15 voting booths for hundreds and thousands of people. So we got to get it. We got to fight it. We got to get there, get out to vote, do what we got to do, guys. But we got to vote. That's my shout out. We also had online Jeff, Ade, Mike, Jose.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you,
Kevin
Jeff.
Thaxton, Rupka. Bunch of comments online. Thank you guys for joining us online. That's been awesome.
He said, "Oh, Shay for court jester."
Oh my God.
Agree with that one. All right. So that's all the time we have for today's show. It was a great show. Again, thank you, Jeff, for joining us. Great show. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us. We hope that maybe you learned something new or gained a new perspective or even got something off your chest. Don't forget, like, follow, subscribe. We need your support at TLS Live Show.
Tweet me.
And if you missed any of today's episode, you'll be able to rewatch as soon as the show ends. Also, check out our clips online on YouTube and Facebook tomorrow, and make sure you share them out. Get the word out about it. Remember, you can also listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, Google, Alexa. You name it, you should be able to find us some way, somehow. Just ask for Truth Live Shenanigans Podcast or simply go to tlsshow.com for more information. Make sure you join our next live show on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We're expecting Avi to come back and join the TLS crew on Wednesdays. So, Rob B, you were the winner of the game, so you get our final thought for the day. What do you got for us?
Final thought of the day. Be kind to one another. Just be cool. Realize that not everyone is at their best. Not anyone is at their best during these COVID times. So try to be patient. Try to be loving. Try to be understanding. And if you haven't checked it out, Jeff's book.
3-Ring Circus.
All right, guys. Have a great one.
Shenanigans.
Voter suppression has taken many forms.
People have been denied the right to vote for, well, now 80 years.
First, they used the poll tax to keep black folks from voting. Then, it was the literacy test, racial terrorism, and violence.
I don't want everybody to vote.
New day, same old dirty tricks.
There are those in power who are doing their darndest to discourage people from voting.
All calls for investigations after claims of voter suppression.
President Trump sabotaging efforts to vote by mail.
If your vote didn't matter, they wouldn't try so hard to take it from you. Vote early. Vote like your life depends on it. I'm exercising my right to vote, and you should too. Not because I want you to, but because he doesn't.